Destination Newry here in Westminster. We are in the Houses of Parliament with Conor McGinn, who is a local man who works here. So Conor, how long have you been working here first of all?
I've been working here for just over a year.
And so what is it you do here?
I'm the political advisor to Vernon Coker, the Shadow Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. So Vernon's role is to hold the government to account on its policies, particularly in relation to Northern Ireland, but more widely as a member of Labour's shadow cabinet in terms of the government's policies on everything from health to education to the environment. My job in turn is to help Vernon and our shadow ministerial team in terms of research and press, accompanying him on visits to Northern Ireland and elsewhere, and generally to be a source of advice and of research, working as part of a whole Labour team here in Westminster.
So, as you're saying, Vernon is the Shadow Secretary. That means if Labour were to win the next election, Vernon would be the next Secretary of State. Therefore,
yes, that's within the gift of the leader of the Labour Party. Vernon, I'm sure, would certainly hope.
I believe Labour
don't
have tradition that they allow their ministers who win the election to stay on. Is that not?
You'd have to see the leader of the Labour Party for that one down.
Well, if Labour were to win the next election, what differences could we see from a Labour government that we are?
Well, a couple of things have changed in the last decade in Northern Ireland. Firstly, you have a stable and functioning executive and assembly, and the executive take decisions on a day-to-day basis about most things that affect people in their ordinary lives, from roads to schools to hospitals. That's all the responsibility of locally elected assembly members and executive ministers. We very much support that. We were the government who, with others, both in Northern Ireland and the Irish government, brought about the Good Friday Agreement and all the flow from it. We're very proud of the role that we played in that. In terms of our responsibilities now, most of those are around the big economic policies for the whole of the UK and our relations with Europe and the rest of the world. We also have responsibility here for dealing with things like legacy in the past. We don't feel particularly that the current Secretary of State and the current government have given enough focus and priority to Northern Ireland. We would certainly do that. Our economic policy and narrative is different from the government. We believe they're cutting too far and too fast. Particularly when you look at the Northern Ireland economy, there seems to be no strategy there for jobs and growth. There's been no delivery by the Conservative government in terms of providing support for the Northern Ireland executive to get the economy moving and get the economy going again. So for us, the focus and priority would very much, working alongside our partners in the executive, to kick-start the economy in Northern Ireland, to come up with a coherent policy for jobs and growth right across the whole of the United Kingdom, but particularly in Northern Ireland.
Thanks very much. So I do believe you work for a little bit in America. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I was very privileged to be able to take part in the campaign to elect Barack Obama as president. Interestingly, we're in another election cycle now, so it doesn't seem that long ago when I was there, but the president is standing for a re-election again. I mean, that was a fantastic experience. I was based in Ohio, which is a swing state, so one of the most crucial ones under their electoral system. And I was very lucky to have been part of that, to have learned a lot from it, and to be able to come back here and share the valuable knowledge that I gained from being there with colleagues here. I also was very privileged to be with the Shadow Secretary of State in the White House on St Patrick's Day last year. I mean, interestingly for me, I ended up speaking with Congressman Joseph Crowley, who has links to the Slay, and whose relations are the McKevitts, one of whom, Noel McKevitt, taught me at school. So I went all the way to Capitol Hill and to Washington only to meet a congressman who knew the Camla, Bestbrook and the Slay area, and they had family links there. So the bigger the world gets, the smaller it is.
It's like being in Newry again, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So you are a Newry man yourself, and you're living in London, so do you find it tough to stay in touch with home, or what's...?
No, not at all. I feel very lucky. I have to make the distinction, Danny. I know a down man like yourself would like to claim everybody from the area from Newry, but my mother is from Bestbrook and I'm from Camden, so I'm very much an Armagh man. We're a lucky generation to the extent that when my parents lived away from home, they had very little access to what was going on. But through the web and through social media, through mobile phones and email, and through Destination Uri and the availability that it gives to me to watch, you know, even championship football and down in Armagh, local soccer. I mean, that's absolutely fantastic for people like me who are away. And you know, I've been away for 10 years this year, but I like to think in the first instance I have retained my accent, which a lot of people who move to London and who move away from home don't. But also that I still feel a real affinity with home. You know, I don't think you ever quite stop missing home. But luckily for me, I'm there a lot with work, and I'm able to get back to South Armagh as much or as little sometimes as I want, but certainly at the minute as much as I want, and that's great for me, and it's really important for me to retain those links with home.
Thank you. Now, what about the Irish community over here? Are you involved at all in things like that?
Yeah, I mean, before I took this job, I worked in the Irish voluntary sector, and some of the work I did was around the health of the Irish community here. I worked in for a charity that looked after the welfare of the families and relatives of prisoners and prisoners themselves here. So I'm sort of acutely aware of the community. I'm the chairman of a GAA club in North London that we newly founded, and I feel very much part of an Irish community here, which in turn is part of a much bigger community. And I think anyone in London over the Olympics saw just how great the contribution the Irish have made to this city, but also how much increasingly that is valued and appreciated by people who live here too, by people from London, by people from England. And I don't think that, I think that relations between Britain and Ireland are better than they have ever been. That's a great thing for the Irish community here, and I'm very proud that I'm able to play just a tiny part in that.
Thanks very much, Conor, for talking to us anyway. That's all we have here from Destination Uri.